Hi, it's me, Ingrid INFP, and we're in the forest clearing again. It's about to rain, I think, and it's quite cold, so we'll see how this goes. But I wanted to talk about seeing autistic people and loving them in different ways. I would be talking about my new supervisor, uh, who is diagnosed autistic, and I'm going to be talking about my dad and my brother who are not diagnosed but are very similar to my new supervisor. And I will touch a little bit on my ex-friend, the INFJ, because there is some similarities there. And I'm guessing that the similarity is autism, but it might be something else. I do think, however, that all these people are neurodivergent in some sense. I won't go into things that will, hurt our privacy or anything, but I do want to point out some quirks that make me love them even more. So it's going to be about autistic to autistic interactions, and obviously there is the whole double empathy thingy where apparently there's autistic people think in a certain sense and you can communicate in a certain sense, and neurotypical people or allistic people who are not autistic basically communicate and are in a different sense, and these two groups have a hard time understanding each other, while autistic to autistic have a good communication, and neurotypical to neurotypical or allistic and allistic also communicate. There is nuance in this though, because a lot of neurotypical people can't communicate with each other, and a lot of autistic people also can't really communicate with each other. It's not like you're magically going to like connect with an autistic person just because you're autistic, but it does help. It does help because the autistic difference is in social interactions. So it will be, in general, easier to connect to another autistic person. But so I'm not going to be focusing too much on how that works, because it's a little bit, there's not really anything I can point to that leads to this magical connection. However, there are some quirks that just really make me smile and laugh when I see it in an autistic person, like my supervisor, because I'm like, oh God, wow, I relate to this, or that is so much like my dad, or that is so much like my brother, or it's so much like my friend, and it's like, wow, it's so weird, you've never met, but I think that you would get along really great, So, my new supervisor is late diagnosed. He's a doctor like me. Oh, there are the geese. I don't know if you could hear that, but there were some geese that were flying over there. Anyway, so I like how sometimes my new supervisor will be like, he's right now he's going to Japan on a trip, and I'm like super jealous of him going on a trip to Japan, because that's what I've been wanting to do for 2 years now, I think. Anyway, but he was like, oh, but I really want pastries and cookies. He hates chocolate, which is like total opposite of me, who loves chocolate, and I cannot live without chocolate, but he hates chocolate, but he loves pastries and cookies. And he was like, oh, but in Japan, I'm not going to have desserts like that. And he was like wondering if he should bring like his safe foods, I guess. He didn't call it that, but if he should bring it on his trip, or if there was any way to find these things when he was in Japan. And I said, well, there are plenty of cafes, they have those pancakes and stuff. It's maybe not to his taste, all of the kawaii cafes, but there are places where you can get different kinds of snacks. And also the world is more globalized, so And I don't know, he just seemed so relieved to know that. And I could tell that this was something that was stressing him out quite a lot. And I was like, yeah, I mean, me too. If I, when I went to Scotland, I basically bought all of these shortbread cookies because, I couldn't deal with being in a place that was different and not having that little comfort of this, safe food, I guess. So I had a bunch of shortbread cookies for when I couldn't find like a meal that appealed to me. Like when you're out on the go. Also, I hadn't planned like where I was going to go and eat and stuff, so maybe next time I should plan a little bit better. But it was really comforting as an autistic person to have, this safe food, a snack that I could eat, because otherwise I would have basically, passed out from low blood sugar. So that really made me laugh about my supervisor because we're alike in that sense. Another thing is that he is very, he likes making lists, and that reminds me of my dad, who really likes making lists, and it calms him down to make lists and to, like, he'll look at the list of patients that we're going to meet in the afternoon at the emergency part of my clinic, and they might be like 12 patients on that list, 11, 12 patients. And he'll like have memorized and written down basically everybody's name, age, what they're seeking for, what to do. And he'll have done that in the space of, 5 minutes. We've already planned on everything that we're going to do about all these 12 patients, basically. While for the other people, it drags on and people are like, thinking he's already planned this out. I do not relate to that, but my dad is the same sort of person. My dad will write a list down, possibly because my dad and my supervisor are maybe both ISTJs, but my dad will write all the topics of conversation, for example, for a meeting, very detailed down, where he will write, if we go on a trip, he'll be like, 8:05, check the tickets. 8:10, go to this attraction, and then he'll be like planning in for my mom to have like chill time, or he has to account for extra time because my mom has probable ADHD, and she gets distracted and like destroys my dad's perfect plans. So my dad has learned to accommodate for that, I guess, in his whole thing. But yeah, it's just funny to see my supervisor do a similar kind of thing. Another thing is that my supervisor is really into certain, hyperfixations or special interests or whatever this is. So he'll sometimes blurt out a fact, and like he can't stop himself. We'll be in the middle of a conversation and there'll be the thing, and he's learned to like say, is it okay if I chime in with my little fact? Sometimes he'll say like, it's my Asperger's. He'll say like, I have this fact. He got diagnosed back when it was called Asperger's, so that's what he calls it. But he'll chime in with this thing, and it's like this hyper specific little fact that he has to get out, and it's like, you know why there are so many eggs on Easter, and then he starts talking about all the facts about these eggs and everything, and yeah, I laugh at it. My ESFP colleague is getting into gardening, and my supervisor, and she said, oh, I bought a kiwi plant, and the supervisor was like, oh, you know that you have to cross-pollinate kiwi, from like you have to have a male kiwi plant and a female kiwi plant, and you have to crossbreed it, and you have to do it like manually yourself. And my ESFP colleague was like shocked that she has to do this. But it was like so typically him that he would, like, that's the first thing that he said about it. It's like, oh, you know that there's this fact that you have to know about kiwi plants. And he's really into stamps. He's really into bird watching. Right now he's getting into fishing. And it's like he has to know everything about, like, all the facts. And, you know, stamp collecting is such a stereotypical autistic thing. But my dad also has a stamp collection. My dad also has, when he was a kid, he caught butterflies and he pinned them onto, onto the wall. And he wrote the names of all of the butterflies that he'd caught. You know, we still have those butterflies in my grandparents' house. And so, yeah, my dad was really interested in, catching and labeling butterflies. And these kinds of things are stereotypical autistic things. And my dad also is the kind of person who will have, often it's historical facts. My dad is really interested in history. And so once you get him started, it's like he has this fact that he has to say, Usually he stays pretty silent. But I can tell that. And I was telling my brother about this. My brother doesn't know about, that my dad is autistic or that my supervisor is autistic. But I was telling my brother about my supervisor. And my brother was like, yeah, I do that too, where my brother, will have this fact which she will have to get out. And my brother said, yeah, I know that I have to get it out, but I know that it's not socially acceptable, so I don't do it. But he feels like there's this rush of energy that he has to stop. And yeah, it's sad that my brother has to do that, but I was like, yeah, I mean, I guess that's my brother and my dad are quite similar in that. And I said, yeah, well, I have that too. I haven't broached the subject of autism with my brother, but there is something. My brother, when he was small, was really interested in trains, and he was a map genius, he knew every single capital of all the countries in the world by the age of 6 or something. He was really interested in those kinds of stereotypical boy autism things. And I think that the thing that unites my supervisor, my dad, and my brother is that they're all guys. And I think that they all have pretty, stereotypical male autistic person's interests that are easily things that you can catch. Well, for me, I was more interested in psychology and the human body and that kind of thing, which isn't really, something that is associated with being autistic. But yeah, so I really appreciate my supervisor for helping me translate a little bit my own thoughts to my boss, because we had a meeting with my boss, and my supervisor made a summary of the situation and gave that. And before we talked to my boss, he said, is it okay if I talk first and give a little bit of a summary, and you can chime in if you want? And that was such a wonderful thing to do, and I'm so happy that he did that. And then I think that we're pretty on the same page in most aspects. Another thing is that my supervisor does not like to cook. And he says that it's just such a drag. And I relate to that. There's a really big bird. Wow. Sorry guys. I think that the bird is gone. I don't know, that was some kind of like falcon or something. I don't know what it was. But yeah, so bird identification. Now, so I like linguistics and such, and it's not like the same sort of special interest. Anyway, my supervisor really did a good job in like making sure that things are clear for me. Another thing is, I notice that sometimes that the way that my supervisor stands, I'm like, gosh, he stands like my dad. And I realize, wait, I stand like this too. And he'll often like sit with his hands together in his knees, and I don't know what it is. There's something about the way that maybe autistic people move. Maybe it's because of like proprioception being different, or I don't know what it is. You know, it's subtle. It's just like I'll see like autistic people moving their heads a little bit in a strange way. There's something about it that is just like, and I recognize it, and I'm like, I get taken aback every time, and I'm like, whoa, you know, and it just, you know, it's endearing to me. It's endearing to me. I saw this with my INFJ friend too, like certain movements, this certain clumsiness. I don't know what it is. There's this, my INFJ friend was really into like going into deep subjects directly. I don't know if that's because he was an INFJ or because of other mental health issues, or if it was really autism, you know. From what I heard from his childhood, he seems like he was a bright boy with special interests in things and eclectic interests. And, you know, when he was little, he bought a dictionary so that he could learn English, so that he could play a lot of video games and build a community that way. But that in itself is not autistic. It's just there are these similarities between people sometimes. And I guess that's why I'm really into MBTI, because there are certain similarities that, you know, can't be explained by the life experience of different people, you know? Sometimes it's like, how can two people be so similar yet live completely different lives? Or, you know, how can these people be so different and yet live super similar lives? You know, and then I'm like, And that's why I think that's autistic people could really easily become friends and click, because I live a very different life from my supervisor. But there are certain things that are so similar between us that, you know, so I guess that I hope to see my own, like his strengths, like my strengths reflected in his strengths, or that kind of thing, and like gaining more confidence in myself as an autistic person through that lens. You know, seeing my, you know, my supervisor, my dad, having successful careers, my brother, you know, with his schooling, and, you know, seeing our strengths and our difficulties reflected in each other is really a powerful experience, you know. And I think that we would gain a lot if we could talk about these things openly with each other. Now that I have this connection with my supervisor, that it's like we can talk about these things in clear wording and terms through the autism diagnosis that we both know that we have, that really helps with communication, and it really helps with finding things in common, you know? Because if we don't talk about these things, then it's just like, well, we don't see the things that we have in common. You know, if I didn't know about the autism diagnosis and that I started recognizing these things in my dad and myself, you know, I don't think that I would connect as well to my dad. Now, that doesn't mean that me and my dad have a great relationship, because we really don't. But I can appreciate certain of his strengths and his quirks and, you know, just him as a person by understanding his autism. He was by no means a great dad. I mean, he was pretty, he had pretty high expectations of me, and is pretty neglectful of me emotionally. But he is mellowing out. I think that having the experience of having my brother 10 years later did help with that. But I think that I can have a sort of connection with my dad through this, by understanding him better. And I can communicate certain of my difficulties by relating it to his experience, even though I'm not using the word autism. I've been talking a little bit to my dad about, for example, now that I'm going down in time, I've talked to my dad about it, and not even to my mom, which surprises even me. But I said, yeah, there's so much going on at work, and there's so much unpredictable stuff going on. I need to have, you know, I said I need to be able to have a routine that works, and my routine is not working very well due to, you know, due to all of this stress at work. And my dad could relate to that, and we could, like, and he was actually like, oh, okay, I understand. Which I don't think I would have been able to do had I not understood this whole autism thing. And that the ways that we are similar I can actually connect on that level. Now, I also met a patient who was high support needs autistic, and, you know, I also connected to him needing to stim. He did, you know, the stereotypical hand flapping thing because he was excited, and he was very, you know, he was very honest, brutally honest. He was like, can I have a smoke right now? He said, he said, you're really cute, but I need a smoke right now. And I was like, okay, go. Come back afterwards, you know. And I can appreciate the differences in people better due to understanding this lens of autism. And I can forgive my supervisor for not liking chocolate because I know that there are other things that he really likes. For example, I'm just joking there, but half joking, because it actually makes me laugh. And yeah, I love seeing that. I love that there is a way that we can connect with people online as well. I see the people in the comments writing long comments, which are often either autistic people or INFPs. Other neurodivergent people will write really long explanations of things, and I will see them in other YouTubers' comments, and I will see them in their videos and be like, oh yeah, me too, you know, and we might lead completely different lives, and I might not be able to connect in other senses, but I can connect to them anyway, due to the autism being similar. And I just love that I've opened a whole new world of, you know, openness to other people by knowing that I'm autistic. And I really appreciate other autistic people. I think that we should try to find each other. It doesn't mean that we can't ever connect to an autistic person, but yeah, I think that being autistic facilitates communication. My ISFJ friend is, that I know of, neurotypical, I think. Um, he's definitely not autistic, and I can have, great conversations with him, and we relate to quite a lot of things. But I am looking forward to finding more friends that are on the spectrum, basically, and also, more people who think similar to me due to their MBTI type. But yeah, there are people who are just waiting to be found, and it gives me some hope, for like, I'm in a pretty isolated situation right now. It gives me hope that I can connect to other people, and people can understand me and I can understand them, and all of that. So that's all I had to say for today. There are plenty of other fun quirks and things that I really appreciate in seeing my autistic supervisor. There is this one case where we were talking about the ear microscope. There's this ear microscope that we have in a certain room, but now it's been moved to a bigger room because the ear microscope is huge. And everybody was like, yeah, it makes more sense for the ear microscope to be in the bigger room. The only problem is that the bigger room is used for acute emergency situations. And so if the ear microscope is in there and we're taking out wax from somebody's ear or something, then we'd have to stop in case an emergency came. And my supervisor was like, no. He said, I do not want that because he doesn't like the transition. He doesn't want to stop himself in the middle of a task. And also, he said that he felt comfortable and safe in the little room. So I guess that the compromise was that we keep it in the big room, but that he can roll it, this huge machine, into the small room if he really needs to. And it's lovely to see that people at my workplace take his ideas as, and they're inclusive of his preferences, that are autistic preferences, but they don't think it that way. But yeah, so it's just lovely. I'm feeling positive today. So anyway, tell me what you guys think. What do you, as autistic people or as non-autistic people, what do you find as funny quirks in other people that you recognize in other people? What do you connect to in other people? I'm interested to know. So yeah, have a great day, everybody. Bye.